Hello, welcome back to our channel, where we explore the deepest and most terrifying mysteries of the world. Today, we have content that will chill even the bravest among you. We will dive into real and supernatural stories that have happened and continue to happen in ordinary homes around various cities with our dear nannies from around the world. These are accounts of sinister shadows, malignant presences, exorcisms, and paranormal encounters that defy all logical explanations. Get ready to hear stories that will touch your mind and heart. From visions of spectral figures to frightening premonitions, these chilling episodes will make you question everything you think you know about life and death. Stories that will make you ponder what exists on the other side. Watch and draw your own conclusions. Attention! These stories are real and may disturb sensitive minds. They were sent by viewers. If you have a story you want to share, send it to us below in the comments. Story 1: The Shadow in the Mirror. Clara was always a dedicated nanny, loved children, and took pride in her work. When the Marinho family hired her, she felt lucky. The house was large and old, with a classic architecture that exuded history. However, there was something disturbing about the house: a large mirror in the main hallway. From the first day, Clara felt a shiver down her spine every time she passed by it. On the first night, while preparing dinner, Clara heard light footsteps in the hallway. Thinking one of the children had woken up, she went to check but found both sleeping soundly. As she passed by the mirror, she saw a shadow quickly pass by. She froze, feeling an intense chill down her spine, but decided to ignore it, thinking it was her imagination. The next night, while Clara was reading a story to the children, she heard whispers coming from the hallway. The whispers were low and indistinct, but they seemed to be calling her name. Frightened, she quickly finished the story and put the children to bed. As she left the room, she noticed the mirror was fogged up, as if someone had breathed heavily on it, and the words "help me" were written on the surface. Clara tried to convince the family to remove the mirror, but she was ignored. Each night, the feeling of being watched intensified. Objects began to move on their own, and Clara often woke up with small handprints around her neck. The children started talking about a sad girl they saw in the mirror, further increasing Clara's terror. Determined to find out what was happening, Clara began researching the house. She discovered the previous family had lost a daughter, Sophia, under mysterious circumstances. Sophia was only 6 years old when she disappeared, and her body was never found. The last time she was seen, she was playing in the hallway, near the mirror. One night, Clara decided to face her fears. She waited until the children were asleep and stood guard in the hallway, watching the mirror. At midnight, she saw the shadow again, but this time, it was clearer. A girl with long dark hair appeared in the mirror, looking directly at Clara. Her eyes were full of sadness and despair. Clara tried to speak to the girl, asking who she was and what she wanted. The girl raised her hand and pressed it against the mirror, leaving a mark. Suddenly, Clara felt pressure on her own neck and fell to her knees, struggling to breathe. The shadow began to emerge from the mirror, materializing in front of her. It was Sophia. She told Clara she had been locked in the attic by her own parents, who didn't want her to reveal a family secret. Sophia died of hunger and thirst, and her spirit remained trapped in the house, trying to find someone to free her. The marks on Clara's neck were a desperate plea for help. With the little strength she had left, Clara promised to help Sophia. The next day, while the family was out, Clara went up to the attic and began to search. She found a hidden diary detailing the abuse and death of Sophia. Opening a panel in the wall, she found the girl's remains. Burying Sophia's bones gave her spirit the peace she so desperately needed. However, when Clara went down to the hallway, the mirror was fogged up again, with the words "thank you" written on it. She felt a momentary relief, but soon realized the house held other dark secrets. That night, Clara was found unconscious in the hallway, with small handprints around her neck and a cold sensation that never left her. The family, scared, decided to move, but Clara was never the same. She knew Sophia wasn't the only soul trapped in that mirror. To this day, anyone who passes by the mirror feels a shiver down their spine and sees shadows moving. Clara disappeared shortly after, and the house remains empty, except for the shadows and whispers that echo at night, terrifying anyone who dares to approach. The mystery of the mirror and the souls trapped in it continues, leaving one question in the air: who will be the next victim? Story 2: The Porcelain Doll. Lucia had always had a difficult life. After the premature death of her parents in a tragic car accident, she was raised by her grandmother, who also passed away when Lucia was 20 years old. With no family and few opportunities, she decided to work as a nanny to support herself. Her previous experiences were normal until she accepted a job at the Vasconcelos family's house. The Vasconcelos were a wealthy family living in an isolated mansion in the countryside. Lucia was hired to take care of Luisa, a 6-year-old girl. Upon arriving at the house, she was greeted by Mrs. Marta, Luisa's mother, who seemed worried and nervous but did not explain why. She only emphasized the importance of taking good care of Luisa and casually mentioned a collection of porcelain dolls that the girl adored. On her first day of work, Lucia was introduced to the famous collection. The dolls were beautiful, all perfectly aligned on shelves in Luisa's room. However, one doll, in particular, caught her attention. It was different from the others, with glassy eyes that seemed to follow Lucia wherever she went. It had black hair, a period red dress, and an almost malicious expression. Luisa called her Amelia. Curious about the doll, Lucia asked Luisa where it came from. Luisa replied that the doll was a birthday present from a distant aunt who had already passed away. Since Amelia arrived, Luisa always seemed to have company, talking to her as if she were a real person. That first night, Lucia woke up to low laughter coming from Luisa's room. Investigating, she found Luisa sitting on the bed, talking to the doll. She asked who she was talking to, and Luisa cheerfully replied, "With Amelia, she tells me stories." Lucia felt a chill but decided to ignore it, thinking it was just the fertile imagination of a child. In the following days, strange events began to occur. Objects moved around, doors locked by themselves, and Lucia heard whispers and sinister laughter when she was alone in the house. Whenever something strange happened, the doll seemed to be in a different position. One night, Lucia woke up with an extreme cold sensation. Looking around, she saw the doll sitting on the edge of the bed, something it definitely hadn't been doing. Frightened, Lucia decided to lock Amelia in the closet. The next morning, she found the doll back on Luisa's bed as if nothing had happened. Things got even stranger when Luisa became more withdrawn and started speaking in a language Lucia couldn't identify. Additionally, Lucia began to have frequent nightmares about the doll, always seeing Amelia smiling maliciously and whispering threatening words. One night, Lucia heard a loud and strange noise coming from Luisa's room. She ran there and found Luisa crying, pointing at the doll, which was sitting in a chair. Luisa said Amelia wanted to hurt her. Desperate, Lucia grabbed the doll and tried to throw it away, but all the doors and windows of the house were locked. Suddenly, the light flickered, and Lucia felt small, cold hands around her neck. Struggling to breathe, she looked at the doll, which now had a malicious look and seemed almost alive. With all her strength, Lucia managed to break free and ran to the family room, where she found an old diary. The diary revealed the dark story of the doll. Amelia belonged to Luisa's deceased aunt, a woman involved in occult practices. The doll was used in macabre rituals and was cursed. Luisa's aunt died under mysterious circumstances, and the doll was passed on, bringing tragedies wherever it went. Determined to break the curse, Lucia read that the only way to free the spirit trapped in the doll was to burn it at midnight while reciting an incantation. As she prepared for the ritual, the house seemed to come alive with a malevolent force. The walls trembled, whispers grew louder, and shadows danced around her. At midnight, Lucia lit a fire in the fireplace and, with trembling hands, placed the doll on the flames. As she recited the incantation, the doll's eyes glowed with a sinister light, and an ear-piercing scream filled the room. The doll twisted and writhed in the flames, and Lucia felt as if the whole house was screaming in agony. When the ritual was over, the doll was nothing but ashes. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the house fell silent. Exhausted and shaken, Lucia collapsed. She was found the next morning by Mrs. Marta, who was shocked by the state of the house and the sight of Lucia, pale and trembling. Lucia told the family everything, and although skeptical at first, they couldn't deny the changes in the house's atmosphere. They decided to move, leaving the cursed house and its dark history behind. As for Lucia, she never took another babysitting job again, haunted by the memories of that terrifying experience. To this day, the story of Amelia and the haunted doll is whispered among locals, and anyone who passes by the old Vasconcelos mansion feels an inexplicable chill. The ashes of the doll were never found, and some say her spirit still roams, searching for a new vessel to inhabit, leaving a lingering fear that the nightmare could begin again at any moment. Story 3: The Locked Room. Renata was a dedicated single mother, struggling to support her daughter Sophia, after her husband left without warning. With little money and many debts, she was desperate for a job that paid well and allowed her to be present in her daughter's life. When she saw the ad for the Moretti family looking for a nanny, it seemed like a dream opportunity. The house was a Victorian mansion in the countryside, and the offered salary was generous. Renata decided to apply immediately. During the interview, Mrs. Moretti seemed kind, but there was something unsettling in her eyes. She casually mentioned that the house had a room in the attic that was always locked and asked Renata not to try to enter it. "It's just an old storage room, nothing to worry about," she said with a forced smile. Desperate for the job, Renata asked no questions. On her first day of work, Renata was enchanted by the house, despite its old appearance and dusty furniture that exuded a sense of abandonment. The children, Tomas and Helena, were adorable and quickly grew fond of her. However, from the start, Renata felt an unsettling presence in the house. At night, she heard whispers coming from the attic, as if someone was there. One night, while putting the children to bed, Renata asked about the locked room. Tomas, with wide eyes, said it was where the girl from the attic lived. Helena, even more frightened, whispered that she sometimes saw a pale and sad figure in the hallway at night. The children seemed genuinely terrified, and Renata decided to investigate. The next day, while the family was out, Renata went up to the attic. The door was locked, but there was a cold feeling surrounding it, as if someone was on the other side. Determined, Renata found an old key in the basement that seemed to fit the lock. With trembling hands, she opened the door. The room was dusty, with old toys and a wooden crib in the corner. However, what caught her attention the most was a dusty diary on the floor. As she flipped through it, Renata discovered it belonged to a girl named Isabella, who had lived in the house many years ago. The diary detailed the abuses Isabella suffered from her parents, who locked her in the attic for days on end. Isabella died of hunger and thirst, and her spirit remained trapped in the house. As Renata read, she felt an increasingly strong presence in the room. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and a spectral figure appeared. It was a pale girl with sad eyes and tattered clothes. Isabella. She reached out to Renata, murmuring, "Help me." Scared, Renata tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. Isabella began to cry, tears of blood streaming down her face. The walls shook, and Renata felt an intense pressure on her chest. Desperate, she screamed for help, but no one seemed to hear. Renata remembered Isabella's words in the diary about an amulet that could free her spirit. The amulet was hidden in a toy box in the room. With effort, Renata found the box and the amulet, a small necklace with a cross pendant. Holding it, she felt a comforting warmth. Renata recited a prayer she had read in the diary, and Isabella's figure began to fade. The girl smiled for the first time, silently thanking her before disappearing. The room door opened, and Renata ran out, sweating and gasping for air. When the family returned, Renata told them everything, but Mrs. Moretti seemed more concerned with maintaining appearances than believing in ghost stories. Renata decided it was time to leave, taking Sophia with her to start a new life. However, the mystery did not end there. Days later, the house was sold, and the new family found Isabella's diary. Strangely, the pages detailing the release of her spirit were blank, as if they had never been written. The new owners also began hearing whispers at night and seeing a pale figure in the hallway. Isabella's spirit seemed not to have found the peace she sought. Renata, now in a new job, received phone calls from unknown numbers, where only the sound of a child crying could be heard on the other end. The mystery of the locked room remains, and the question still echoes: will Isabella ever find rest? Story 4: The Possessed Child. Marta never had much luck in life. She grew up in an orphanage after her parents tragically died in a fire. Life in the orphanage was tough, and Marta learned to be strong and resilient. When she turned 18, she left to face the world alone. She managed to get some temporary jobs, but nothing that really paid the bills. When she saw an ad from a wealthy family looking for a nanny for their 8-year-old son, she thought she might have finally found some stability. The Almeida family lived in an isolated mansion, surrounded by tall trees and a wrought iron fence. Marta was greeted by Mrs. Almeida, who seemed relieved to have found her. "Pedro is a good boy, but he's been going through a difficult phase," she said with a worried look. Marta didn't ask many questions. She was desperate for a job. On the first day, Pedro seemed like a normal child, though a bit withdrawn. The house, however, exuded a heavy atmosphere. There was an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant sound of the wind blowing through the trees. Marta felt a chill when she first entered Pedro's room. It was a large room, decorated with expensive toys, but there was something strange in Pedro's eyes, something she couldn't identify. The first few weeks were quiet, but Marta couldn't ignore the strange incidents that began to occur. One night, while preparing dinner, she heard a loud noise coming from Pedro's room. She ran there and found the family dog dead on the floor, with strange bite marks. Pedro was standing next to it, with a sinister smile on his face and blood-covered hands. "Rex didn't want to play with me," he said in a voice that didn't sound like his. Marta was horrified, but before she could react, Mrs. Almeida walked in, saw the scene, and fainted. Mr. Almeida, who worked night shifts, wasn't home. Marta cleaned up the mess and tried to comfort Pedro, but he just looked at her with those empty eyes. In the following days, even more disturbing things started happening. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered, and Marta heard voices whispering her name at night. Pedro started speaking in unknown languages and demonstrating superhuman strength, pushing heavy furniture with ease. One night, while Marta was trying to sleep, she heard a sinister laugh coming from Pedro's room. She got up slowly and went there. When she opened the door, she saw Pedro floating in the air, his eyes glowing red. "He is here," Pedro said in a voice that echoed through the room. "He wants you." Marta tried to run, but the door slammed shut violently. She felt invisible hands around her neck, squeezing tightly. She remembered a crucifix her mother used to wear and that she always carried in her pocket. Desperate, she grabbed the crucifix and held it tightly. The invisible hands released her, and Pedro fell to the floor, unconscious. The next day, Marta found an old book of rituals in a forgotten library in the house. The book was full of strange symbols and instructions for exorcisms. Desperate to save Pedro, Marta decided to perform the ritual that night. As she prepared the ingredients, the house seemed to rebel against her. The walls shook, the lights flickered, and she heard demonic laughter echoing through the hallways. Pedro, now fully possessed, watched her with evil eyes. When the clock struck midnight, Marta began the ritual. She recited the words from the book, but Pedro writhed and screamed, demonic voices coming from his mouth in a terrifying cacophony. The house seemed alive, trying to prevent Marta from continuing. However, she persevered, feeling the malevolent presence fighting against every word she uttered. Suddenly, an invisible force threw Marta against the wall, knocking her unconscious. When she awoke, she saw Pedro lying on the floor, inert. She approached him, fearing the worst. But he opened his eyes, now clear and innocent as before. "He is gone," Pedro whispered before fainting again. Mrs. Almeida, seeing the scene, finally believed Marta and agreed to call a specialist in exorcisms. The house was blessed and purified, but the marks of possession never completely disappeared. Marta decided to leave the job, knowing there was something in that house that could never be fully eradicated. She moved to another city with the small compensation she received, trying to start her life over. However, the mystery did not end there. Years later, a new family moved into the mansion, and strange events started happening again. Objects moved on their own, sinister laughter echoed at night, and the new nanny reported seeing a shadowy figure in the hallways. Pedro's story and the possession were never completely forgotten, leaving a dark warning for anyone who dared to live in that house. The evil never truly left. Marta, now living a simple life in a distant town, still receives strange phone calls at night, where only the sound of a child laughing can be heard. She knows the nightmare isn't over, but hopes the distance keeps the evil at bay. The Almeida mansion remains a place of mystery and terror, where the malevolent presence patiently waits for its next victim. Story 5. The Stone Angel. Anna was an ordinary young woman, full of dreams and hopes. In her last year of high school, she was determined to save money for a graduation trip with her friends. When she saw an ad looking for a summer nanny, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. The Martins family, who lived in an old and elegant house in the suburbs, needed someone to take care of their 7-year-old daughter Sophia. Anna was warmly welcomed by the Martins, who seemed to be a perfect family. The house had a huge garden, filled with flowers and well-kept shrubs. In the center of the garden, there were several statues, but one in particular caught Anna's attention, a stone angel with open wings and empty eyes that seemed to follow her wherever she went. From the first day, Anna felt a chill whenever she passed by that statue. On her first day of work, Anna met Sophia, a sweet and shy girl. Sophia seemed to spend a lot of time in the garden, especially near the stone angel. "He is my friend," said Sophia with an innocent smile. Anna laughed, thinking it was just the fertile imagination of a child. That night, when putting Sophia to bed, Anna noticed that the girl kept staring at the window, which faced the garden. "The angel will protect me from nightmares," Sophia murmured before closing her eyes. Anna felt a chill but decided to ignore it, believing it was just a phase the girl was going through. The following nights were marked by strange events. Anna started hearing whispers and light footsteps in the hallway at night. Once, when checking on Sophia, she found the girl sitting at the window, staring fixedly at the angel in the garden. "He said you don't like him," Sophia murmured, without taking her eyes off the statue. Anna tried to ignore the growing sense of discomfort, but couldn't. One day, she decided to investigate more about the statue. She asked Mrs. Martins about the origin of the stone angel, and she said the statue had been there since they bought the house decades ago. No one knew for sure where it came from, but it had always been there, imposing and enigmatic. One night, Anna woke up to the sound of low laughter and whispers coming from the garden. She looked out the window and saw Sophia standing next to the angel statue, talking animatedly. She ran downstairs and rushed to the garden, but when she got there, Sophia was alone, staring at the angel with glassy eyes. "He said he's mad at you," Sophia whispered before being taken back inside by Anna. The following days were even more disturbing. Anna started having frequent nightmares about the statue, seeing it move and whisper her name. She felt constantly watched, and one night, she woke up with an extreme cold sensation. Looking out the window, she saw that the stone angel had changed position, now looking directly at her room. Desperate, Anna decided she needed to do something. She found an old mythology book in the house library that mentioned stone angels and how they could be used as guardians or curses. The only way to break the curse was to destroy the statue, but it had to be done at midnight under the full moon's light. On the appointed night, Anna waited until everyone was asleep. She grabbed a sledgehammer and went to the garden. The full moon illuminated the statue, which looked more threatening than ever. With trembling hands, Anna raised the sledgehammer and struck the statue with all her strength. To her horror, the statue began to writhe and emit an agonizing sound, as if it were alive. Suddenly, Sophia appeared in the garden, her eyes filled with tears. "You're hurting my friend," she cried, running to try to stop Anna. Before Anna could react, an invisible force threw her backward, causing her to fall and hit her head. When she regained consciousness, the statue was in pieces, but a dark aura emanated from the remains. The Martins woke up to the noise and rushed to the garden. Seeing the scene, they were horrified but couldn't deny the change in the atmosphere. The oppressive feeling and coldness disappeared, and Sophia seemed to have returned to normal. Anna, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. She decided to leave the job immediately, feeling that she could never look at a stone statue the same way again. She returned home and tried to move on with her life, but the nightmares persisted. Months later, while preparing for her graduation trip, Anna received an anonymous letter. Inside, there was a photo of the Martins' house and a new stone angel statue in the garden. On the back of the photo it was written, "He found a new home." Anna never discovered who sent the letter or how the new statue appeared. The mystery remains, and Anna lives with a constant feeling of being watched. The stone angel, with its empty gaze, continues to haunt her dreams, leaving an air of mystery. Was the evil truly defeated, or did it just change form? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like to support us. More importantly, if you have any supernatural experiences, don't keep them to yourself. Write your story in the comments below. Share your encounter with the unexplained, feed the collective curiosity, and who knows, maybe together we can unravel these mysteries that linger like fog between the world of the living and the dead. Remember, the unknown is always lurking, just a story away. And now, with the night falling, who knows what shadows may emerge from the darkness to whisper another true tale of terror.